The docking bay of the Zapirian First Contact Station hummed with restrained energy, its bioluminescent arches pulsing in slow waves of violet and indigo. Alien technicians with iridescent chitinous skin moved gracefully between organic-looking support struts, their multiple limbs adjusting unseen systems with practiced ease. The air carried the faint metallic tang of ionized particles mixed with something almost floral, a scent the station's environmental systems generated to calm newly arrived species. Captain Elias Vance of the United Earth starship Pale Horse stepped onto the boarding ramp, his boots clanging against the metal in sharp contrast to the whisper, quiet movements of the Zapirian greeting party. His uniform, a slate grey jumpsuit with reinforced shoulders, looked brutally utilitarian next to the flowing, almost liquid robes of the aliens awaiting him. Ambassador Krellis, his 4 primary arms folded in what passed for a welcoming gesture among his kind, inclined his elongated head. "Captain Vance," he said, his voice a modulated ripple of sound from the translator embedded in his collar. "The Galactic Federation welcomes you to the Sentient Integration Protocols. We trust your journey was uneventful." Vance didn't smile. Uneventful enough. His eyes flicked to the cluster of Federation observers standing just behind Krellis. Various species, some floating, some on multiple limbs, all watching him with varying degrees of curiosity and thinly veiled amusement. A Vorac commander, his scaled hide the color of rust, let out a low, guttural sound. "Primitive," he muttered in his own tongue, not bothering with his translator. "Look at their ship, solid construction, no plasma contours. Like something from the early fusion age." The Pale Horse loomed behind Vance, its angular, armored hull a stark contrast to the flowing organic curves of the station, where the Zapirian designs favored sweeping lines and seamless transitions. The human vessel was all hard edges and reinforced plating, its gun ports visibly protruding rather than hidden behind elegant shielding. Krellis gestured with one upper limb. "You must forgive Commander Vexa. The Vorac are direct in their assessments." Vance finally allowed himself a small, tight smile. "No offense taken. We're aware our tech doesn't match Federation aesthetics." Vexa snorted, his slit, pupilled eyes narrowing. "Aesthetics? Your weapons are kinetic, chemical-propelled projectiles. We phased those out 600 cycles ago." Vance didn't rise to the bait. "They work for us." Krellis interjected smoothly. "The Federation's First Contact Protocols are designed to ease newly spacefaring species into the galactic community. Your arrival in the Zapirian exclusion zone was unexpected, but we are prepared to guide your integration." Vance crossed his arms. "We didn't come for guidance, Ambassador. We came to introduce ourselves." A ripple of murmurs passed through the observers. One of them, a willowy Cerulean with translucent skin, whispered to another, "They don't even understand the protocols. They think this is a social call." Krellis hesitated, his antennae twitching. "Captain, surely you understand the significance of this moment. The Federation has overseen the integration of 17 sentient species. Our methods are proven." Vance's gaze didn't waver. "Your methods assume we need to be integrated. We don't." Silence fell over the docking bay. Even the ambient hum of the station's systems seemed to quiet. Then Vexa laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You hear that? The soft-skinned mammal thinks it doesn't need the Federation." He stepped forward, his claws flexing. "Tell me, Captain, what exactly do you bring to the galaxy besides outdated weapons and arrogance?" Vance didn't blink. "A question for you, Commander. How many wars has your species fought in the last century?" Vexa's spine stiffened. "The Vorac are warriors. We have no need for petty conflicts. The Federation maintains peace." "Exactly," Vance's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You've forgotten what real war looks like." "We haven't." Krellis shifted uneasily. "This is most irregular. First Contact Protocol clearly states." Vance cut him off. "Your protocol was written by species that never had to fight for survival. Ours was." He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back. "Oh, and Ambassador, you might want to update your records. Our guns are chemical propelled, but they're not just kinetic." As he walked back up the ramp, the station's sensors suddenly flared to life, their soft glow turning urgent crimson. A Zapirian technician gasped, his manipulator limbs fluttering over a readout. "Ambassador," their weapons, the energy signatures. Krellis stared at the retreating human. "What about them?" The technician's voice trembled. "They're not just guns, they're railguns, and they're powered." Vance didn't look back as the pale horse's engines thrummed to life. The sound a deep, visceral growl that vibrated through the station's delicate superstructure. Behind him, the aliens stood frozen, their confidence shaken for the first time in centuries. The Federation had expected a nervous, primitive species. They'd gotten Captain Elias Vance instead. The war game arena shimmered into existence around them, holographic asteroids shifting like living things to form the battlefield. Lieutenant Mara Cole adjusted the straps of her zero-G harness, feeling the familiar weight of her rifle against her chest. Across the void, the Vorac fleet assembled, sleek, predatory vessels with curved hulls that seemed to ripple like muscle beneath dark metallic skin. "Cultural exchange," Cole muttered into her comm. "That is what they're calling this." Captain Vance's voice crackled in her ear. "They want to see what we're made of. Lieutenant, let's not disappoint." The Vorac Battlemaster Droth's image flickered onto their main screen, his four eyes blinking in sequence. "Human vessel pale horse," he hissed, his translator flattening his voice into something cold and mechanical. "You will engage in simulated combat per Federation First Contact Protocol Phi Alpha. Your primitive kinetic weapons have been calibrated to our systems. Try not to embarrass yourselves." Cole clenched her jaw. The Vorac had spent the last 3 hours mocking their railguns, their archaic projectile weapons, their lack of plasma shielding. She'd lost count of how many times she'd heard the word obsolete. The simulation began with a blaring horn that echoed through the ship. Cole's display lit up 20 Vorac cruisers against their 6 ships. The odds were insulting. "All units, pattern Delta Phi," Vance ordered. The human ships didn't scatter. They didn't form a defensive line, they charged. Cole's stomach lurched as the pale horse accelerated, her boots magnetizing to the deck. The Vorac fleet hesitated, just for a second, before surging forward to meet them. "Sir, they're locking plasma lances," the tactical officer called out. Vance didn't flinch. "Let them." The first volley of energy weapons streaked toward them, brilliant blue, white spears of death. At the last possible second, the human ships rolled, their angular hulls presenting minimal cross-sections. The plasma grazed their shields, but none connected. Cole grinned. The Vorac had expected them to tank hits like their own armored behemoths. Instead, the humans dodged. "Return fire," Vance said calmly. The pale horse's railguns thundered, tungsten slugs screaming across the void. The Vorac hadn't even bothered to evade. Why would they? Their shields were rated to withstand energy weapons 10 times more powerful than human kinetics. The first slug struck a cruiser's shield. It flared violet, then shattered like glass. The second slug punched clean through the hull, sending debris spinning into space. Silence on the bridge. Cole watched the Vorac ship scramble, their perfect formation collapsing into chaos. They didn't know, she realized aloud. They didn't know railguns ignore their shields. Vance's smile was razor. "Thin first rule of war, Lieutenant. Never show your enemy your best tricks until it is too late." The Vorac Battlemaster's voice screeched over the comm. "Impossible. Your weapons should not." "Shouldn't what?" Cole cut in. "Work. Funny how that keeps happening." The simulation's AI announced casualties. 3 Vorac ships disabled in the opening salvo. The remaining vessels wheeled about, trying to bring their broadsides to bear. "Second wave incoming," the sensor officer yelled. This time, the Vorac fired in staggered volleys, trying to compensate for the humans' evasive maneuvers. It didn't matter. The pale horse twisted through the barrage like a dancer, her thrusters flaring. "Marine detachment, prepare for boarding action," Vance ordered. Cole's blood sang. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. She slapped her helmet into place and checked her squad's vitals on her HUD. "All right, boys and girls, time to show these lizards why you don't invite humans to a knife fight." The Vorac never saw the breaching pods coming. Their sensors were tuned for energy signatures, not the crude ballistic trajectories of human boarding craft. By the time they realized what was happening, Cole's Marines were already cutting through their airlocks. Zero-G combat was second nature to humans. They'd trained for it since boot camp. The Vorac, for all their warrior pride, moved like drunkards in weightlessness. Cole kicked off a bulkhead, her combat knife flashing. A Vorac warrior swung a plasma cutter at her, too slow. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, and felt bones snap. His scream was cut short as she drove her blade into his throat. Around her, the Marines fought with brutal efficiency. They used the environment, the walls, the ceilings, anything to gain an advantage. A private pinned a Vorac against a console with his boot and emptied his sidearm into its chest. Another Marine used a fire extinguisher as an improvised club, caving in a skull with a wet crunch. Battlemaster Droth found Cole in the chaos. He was massive, his exoskeleton reinforced with combat augments. "You fight like animals," he spat, blood bubbling from a wound in his side. Cole wiped her knife clean on her thigh. "Wuss, we fight like winners." The simulation ended abruptly, the holographic battlefield dissolving into static. The Federation observers were silent. The Vorac were pale beneath their scales. On the Pale Horse's bridge, Vance leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said mildly, "that was educational." A Zapirian diplomat's voice trembled over the comm. This was not according to protocol. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes. Or never is. The Vorac Battlemaster's final transmission was a single word, thick with disbelief. "How?" Cole unsealed her helmet and took a deep breath. The smell of gunpowder and sweat filled her nostrils. She grinned. Round 1 to humanity. The holographic battlefield shimmered into existence. Asteroids becoming warships, empty space transforming into a killing ground. The Vorac fleet emerged first, sleek, predatory vessels with curved hulls that drank in the light. Their formation was perfect, textbook, the kind of precision only a warrior culture could achieve. The human ships appeared moments later, blocky and angular, their armor pockmarked from real combat the Vorac had never seen. Ambassador Krellis watched from the observation deck, his bioluminescent markings pulsing with amusement. "This will be over quickly," he murmured to the other Federation observers. "The humans don't even have plasma lances, just those primitive railguns." Captain Vance stood motionless on the bridge of the Pale Horse, his hands clasped behind his back. The tactical display showed the Vorac outnumbering them 3-1. "Lieutenant," he said calmly, "signal the fleet, pattern Delta." The Vorac Battlemaster Droth's voice crackled over the comm. "Human, you have courage, but courage means nothing against superior firepower. We will make your defeat swift." Vance didn't respond. He didn't need to. The simulation began with a flash of light. The Vorac moved as one, their ships arcing into a classic envelopment maneuver. The human fleet didn't react. They held position, letting the Vorac close the distance. "Pathetic," muttered a Zapirian observer. "They're frozen with fear." Then the human ships moved. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't a charge. It was something the Vorac had never seen. A chaotic, asymmetrical scatter that made no tactical sense. Ships broke formation in seemingly random directions. The Pale Horse itself drifted lazily toward an asteroid cluster. Droth's mandibles clicked in confusion. What are they doing? This is no recognized battle pattern. On the Pale Horse, Vance watched the Vorac fleet adjust, their perfect formation fracturing as they tried to track the erratic human movements. "Now," he said quietly, 3 human frigates that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly reversed course, their railguns spinning up. The Vorac ships pursuing them had no time to react. The tungsten slugs tore through their unshielded flanks. Holographic explosions bloomed in the void. The observation deck erupted in gasps. That is cheating," sputtered a Federation tactician. They faked a retreat. Vance's voice came over the open channel. You said this was a test of military capability, not a test of who can follow your rulebook. The Vorac regrouped, their remaining ships forming a defensive sphere. The human fleet didn't press the advantage. Instead, they vanished, not with cloaking technology, but by cutting engines and drifting silently behind asteroid cover. Battlemaster Droth snarled. Cowards, face us honorably. A new voice answered. Lieutenant Mara Cole, her transmission laced with static. Honors great for parades, winnings better for war. Then the pale horse reappeared, directly above the Vorac flagship. While the aliens had been searching the ecliptic plane, the human destroyer had burned hard perpendicular to the battlefield, using the system's star for cover. Its railguns fired point-blank into the Dreadmore's command spire. The holographic Vorac flagship shattered into fragments. Silence gripped the observation deck. Ambassador Krellis's markings had gone dark with shock. Federation observers whispered in a dozen languages, their voices hushed with disbelief. On the battlefield, the remaining Vorac ships flailed, their disciplined formations collapsing into chaos. Human vessels struck from unexpected angles, feinting and striking, like wolves harrying prey. A human frigate, badly damaged, venting atmosphere, suddenly spun its bow toward an approaching Vorac cruiser and accelerated to ramming speed. No, screamed a Federation observer. That is not. Ships don't do that. The frigate's reactor went critical on impact, taking the cruiser with it in a brilliant flash. The simulation ended abruptly. The holograms faded, leaving only stunned silence. Battlemaster Droth's image appeared on the main viewer, his exoskeleton quivering with rage. This was no battle. This was butchery trickery. Captain Vance straightened his uniform. It was a lesson. You wanted to test human warfare? You got it. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. In the observation deck, Ambassador Krellis found his voice. Your tactics are unorthodox, dishonorable. Vance turned toward the observation window, his gaze locking onto the Zapirian. Honor, he barked a laugh. You sent your best warriors to test a species you thought was weak. You set the rules to favor yourselves, and now you're upset because we didn't lose the way you expected. He leaned closer to the pickup. There is no honor in underestimating your enemy. The Federation Councillor Zelth, who had remained silent until now, spoke softly. These maneuvers, they are standard for your military. Vance smiled. Standard? No, these were just the ones we were willing to show you. The observation deck erupted again, this time in panicked chatter. The implications were clear. The humans had held back. What else were they capable of? Battlemaster Droth's image flickered, his voice barely controlled. Your kind will regret this insult. The Vorac do not forget. Lieutenant Cole's voice cut in, cheerful and cold, looking forward to round 2. Bring more ships next time. The channel cut, the observation deck dissolved into chaos. Ambassador Krellis stared at the empty space where the human fleet had been, his mind racing. The first contact protocols had been designed to protect primitive species from being overwhelmed by galactic civilization. Now he wondered, who exactly needed protecting? The Vorac boarding pods slammed into the Pale Horse's hull with metallic shrieks. Lieutenant Mara Cole tightened the straps of her powered armor as the ship's alarms wailed. Around her, 12 Marines checked weapons with calm efficiency. Remember, Cole said, her voice steady through the squad's helmet comms. They think close quarters is their game. Let's show them why it is ours. The first breach came amidships. The Vorac warriors poured through the ruptured hull plates, their chitinous armor clicking as they moved. They carried plasma blades that hummed with violet energy, weapons designed to carve through bulkheads and flesh. Cole's HUD painted targets in red. She raised her rifle. Fire at will. The corridor erupted in gunfire. Tungsten rounds punched through Vorac armor like paper. The aliens staggered, their limbs jerking as high. Velocity impacts tore through their bodies. One warrior collapsed, his thorax leaking blue ichor. Another spun, his blade arms severed at the joint. But the Vorac kept coming. Battlemaster Droth led the second wave, his carapace marked with the scars of 100 victories. He dodged between the bullets with terrifying speed, his mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among his kind. Pathetic kinetics, he roared. You cannot stop us. Cole ejected her spent magazine, switched to bayonets. The Marines didn't hesitate with practiced motions. They fixed 18-inch blades to their rifles. The Vorac hesitated. No species in the Federation used such primitive weapons. Droth laughed, the sound like grinding stone. You think steel can match plasma? Cole didn't answer. She lunged. The Battlemaster parried her first strike, his blade shearing through the air. But Cole twisted, using her armor's servos to pivot mid-thrust. Her bayonet scraped along Droth's side, drawing first blood. The Vorac howled. Around them, the battle dissolved into chaos. Human Marines fought with brutal efficiency, their bayonets finding gaps in chitin, their armored fists crushing mandibles. A corporal named Reyes pinned a warrior to the deck with his knife, then put 3 rounds through its skull. Sergeant Wu used a grenade to clear a cluster of aliens. The explosion sending bodies spinning in zero. Droth recovered, slashing at Cole's visor. She barely ducked in time. The plasma blade seared the bulkhead behind her, leaving molten scars. You fight without honor. Droth spat. Cole kicked off the wall, driving her knee into his thorax. We fight to win. They grappled in the weightless corridor, a tangle of limbs and blades. Droth was stronger, his 4 arms giving him leverage. But Cole had trained for this. She jammed her combat knife into the joint of his lower limb. Twisting blue blood globules floated between them. The Battlemaster roared, swinging wildly. Cole took the hit on her pauldron, the plasma scoring deep grooves in the armor. She didn't flinch. She shoved her bayonet up under his carapace, into the soft tissue beneath. Droth spasmed. His blade clattered away, spinning lazily in zero. He clutched at the wound, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. You fight like animals. Cole wrenched the blade free. Worse, we fight like winners. Around them, the last of the Vorac warriors fell. The Marines stood panting, their armor splattered with alien blood. The ship's AI announced hull breaches in 3 sections, but the boarding action was over. Sergeant Wu floated to Cole's side. They're signaling retreat. Their pods are disengaging. Cole watched as Droth struggled to staunch his bleeding. She tossed him a medkit. Tell your people what happened here today. The Battlemaster caught it clumsily. Why spare me? Because we're not monsters, Cole said. But cross us again, and we'll show you why our ancestors painted themselves with blood before battle. The Vorac said nothing as his comrades dragged him away. The Marines watched the retreating pods, their weapons still ready. In the silence that followed, Reyes chuckled. Think they'll believe him. Cole cycled her helmet's filters, clearing the stench of alien blood. Doesn't matter. They'll learn. The pale horse's comm crackled. Captain Vance's voice cut through the static. All hands, prepare for Phase 2. The Vorac fleet is regrouping. Cole checked her rifle. The magazine clicked home with satisfying finality. You heard the man. Let's give them another lesson. The Marines moved out, their boots magnetizing to the deck as gravity flickered back online. Behind them, floating globules of blue and red marked where 2 species had clashed, and where one had learned the hard way that humanity's bite was far worse than its bark. Somewhere in the void, the Vorac fleet would be licking its wounds, trying to understand how their elite warriors had been bested by creatures they dismissed as weak. Cole smiled behind her visor. Let them wonder. The next surprise would be even worse. The Federation Council chamber hummed with uneasy energy. 1,000 alien eyes, some compound, some slitted, some floating in gelatinous orbs, tracked Captain Vance as he strode toward the central podium. The amphitheater's acoustics carried every whisper, every rustle of exoskeletal plates shifting in discomfort. Above them all, a holographic replay of the battle flickered. Human ships dancing through the Vorac formation like wolves through a herd of startled deer. Ambassador Krellis frills lay flat against his neck, a Zapirian sign of distress. This violates every tenet of honorable warfare, he hissed to the Sarabian delegate beside him. Their tactics are chaotic. Councillor Zelth, a towering Vorac draped in ceremonial battle, scarves slammed a clawed fist onto the podium. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Explain this farce. Human. His vocal cords produced a guttural growl no human throat could replicate. Your vessels broke formation. You attacked retreating ships. He jabbed a talon at the hologram, where the USN Pale Horse's railguns tore through the Dreadmore's engines. You targeted life support systems. Vance didn't flinch. He adjusted his uniform cuff, a deliberately slow movement. You set the parameters, Counselor, simulate real combat conditions. His lips quirked. We did. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Velixi delegation's bioluminescent markings flashed crimson. Their version of shocked, gasping Zelths, nostrils flared. Honorable warriors faced their enemy's head. On. They do not ambush like scavengers. That's why you lost. Vance tapped his datapad. The hologram zoomed in on Lieutenant Cole's boarding party, breaching the Vorac cruiser's command deck. Marines in black armor moved with terrifying precision, their mag boots anchoring them as they fired, reloaded, and advanced without missing a step. You assumed war had rules, it doesn't. The Sarabian delegate's tentacles stiffened. Your species has no concept of martial tradition, no respect for respect. Vance cut in. His voice stayed calm, but something dark flickered in his eyes. We respect results, and today's results say your apex warriors can't handle a species that evolved by killing things smarter, faster, and stronger than them. Silence. Zelth's scarves trembled. You dare, I do. Vance turned to address the entire chamber. You tested us, measured our tech, our tactics, our limits. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Here's what you missed. Earth's predators don't fight fair. They win. The hologram changed. A Vorac Marine, Battlemaster Droth himself, swung a plasma glaive at Lieutenant Cole. She ducked, grabbed his arm, and twisted. The crack of chitin echoed through the chamber. Cole's voice, filtered through her helmet, played clearly. You fight like animals. Her reply was a grinning snarl. Worse, we fight like winners. The chamber erupted. Zelth's claws unsheathed fully, scraping against the podium. This proves nothing except human savagery. Vance tilted his head. Savagery wins wars, Counselor. Or did you forget who just lost a fleet in a training exercise? A new voice cut through the chaos. Harmony, the Federation AI. Its usually melodic tones strained. Counselors, there is an anomaly. The hologram shifted again, displaying energy readings from the battle. Human vessels operated at fame power output during the engagement. Dead silence. Krellis frills stood straight up. What? Vance didn't look at the AI. He kept his eyes on Zelth. Like I said, we were being polite. The Sarabian delegate's tentacles turned pale. The Elixis bioluminescence flickered erratically. Even Zelth took a step back. Harmony's voice was barely audible. Full combat readiness would have resulted in total Vorac fleet annihilation within 17 minutes. Vance finally turned to the AI-12. He shrugged. But who's counting? The chamber dissolved into pandemonium. Delegates shouted, clicked, screeched. A Zapirian fainted. Through it all, Vance stood perfectly still, watching Zelth. The Vorac's scarves hung limp. You held back. First impressions matter. Vance straightened his jacket. Now you know, we are the predators your first contact protocols warned you about. Zelth said nothing. His claws retracted. On the hologram, the battle replay froze on a single image. Lieutenant Cole standing over Droth, her boot on his chest, her rifle aimed at his head. The galaxy's new reality hung in the air, heavier than gravity. Humans didn't follow the rules, they made them. The station's alarms blared as the Pale Horse's weapons array hummed to full power. Captain Vance stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as his ship's targeting systems painted the Zapirian first contact station. The alien structure, once so confident in its superiority, now pulsed with emergency lights like a frightened animal. Ambassador Krellis's voice crackled over the comm, his usual melodic tones replaced by panic. Captain Vance, this is a violation of 17 interstellar treaties. Stand down immediately. Vance didn't respond immediately. He watched as the Federation's defense platform swung toward his ship, too slow, their targeting systems still calibrating to human evasion patterns they'd never accounted for. Harmony, he said calmly. Run a diagnostic on your threat assessment protocols. Tell me what you see. The station's AI core flickered. Harmony's voice, usually serene, now carried a digital tremor. I don't understand. Your weapons' signatures during the war games. They were only at fake capacity. Your engines were operating under artificial limiters. Even your Marine's armor had safety protocols engaged. On the view screen, the Vorac flagship Dreadmore attempted to position itself between the Pale Horse and the station. Vance smirked as his tactical officer, Lieutenant Cho, whispered, "They're using textbook formation Delta Phi predictable." "Ambassador," Vance said, "your people made two mistakes. First, you assumed we'd follow your rules. Second," he nodded to his comm officer, who opened a fleet-wide channel across the human ships. Restraint systems disengaged with a chorus of mechanical growls. "You never asked what our real capabilities looked like." The Pale Horse's main railgun array cycled up with a deep, resonant whine that vibrated through the deck plates. Federation sensors had never recorded energy readings like this. The human weapons weren't just more powerful than shown in the war games. They operated on principles the aliens hadn't even theorized possible. Harmony's core flared crimson. "This can't be. Your power signatures exceed anything in our databases. Those aren't standard kinetic weapons. What are they?" Vance leaned back in his command chair. "You wanted to test humanity. Consider this your final exam." He gestured, and the tactical display zoomed out to show the full human fleet. Ships that had seemed modest now bristling with weapons the Federation couldn't classify. Their drives emitting strange energy signatures that made alien sensors glitch. Commander Vex's face appeared on screen, his chitinous plates flushed with stress colors. "You deceived us. This violates every protocol of what?" Vance interrupted. "Honorable combat fair play?" He chuckled. "We didn't deceive you. We adapted. Something your species seems incapable of." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lock all batteries on the Dreadmore's primary reactor. Let's show them why we call this ship the Pale Horse." The Zapirian station trembled as human targeting systems achieved lock. Harmony's voice became frantic. "Captain, please. Our projections show your single ship could destroy the entire station with that volley. You'd be committing an act of war against the entire Federation." Vance steepled his fingers. "And yet, you're the ones who pointed guns at us first when we entered your little exclusion zone. Funny how that works." He watched as the Vorac flagship shields flickered uncertainly. "Tell me, Harmony, what is your new threat assessment?" The AI core dimmed. Category Omega, unknown technological paradigm. Tactical unpredictability index off the scale. Recommended action, immediate de-escalation. A pause. "Captain Vance, I must know. Why hold back during the war games?" The human captain smiled. "First contact etiquette. We were being polite." He nodded to his comm officer again. "All ships, stand down from attack positions, but keep the guns hot." Returning his attention to the view screen, he added, "Now let's discuss how this relationship is going to work from now on." On the Dreadmore, Battlemaster Droth watched in horrified fascination as human targeting lasers danced across his ship's vulnerable points. His tactical officer whispered, "They've had firing solutions this whole time. They could have destroyed us during the war games whenever they wished." Droth's mandibles clicked in realization. Not just destroy us, humiliate us. They let us think we were winning. He turned to his comm station. "Open a channel to the Federation Council. Tell them, Tell them to revise the first contact protocols immediately. Back on the station, Ambassador Krellis slumped in his pod, his bioluminescence flickering with distress. The human ship's weapons still glowed with ominous energy, but they weren't firing. That was almost worse. The deliberate restraint proving their absolute control of the situation. "What are you?" he whispered. Vance's reply came crisp and clear. "The reason your ancestors hid in caves at night. The thing that made you afraid of the dark." He leaned forward. "Now, shall we discuss terms?" Harmony's core pulsed weakly as it updated every database in the Federation network. New classification, Homo sapiens, threat level, Apex, recommended interaction protocol, extreme caution, do not provoke. The AI had just begun to comprehend the terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't been testing themselves against the galaxy's warriors. They'd been testing the galaxy's worthiness to survive them. The Galactic News Network broadcast played across 1,000 worlds, the shimmering holographic displays showing human warships gliding into formation beside Federation vessels. The sleek, angular shapes of human destroyers looked alien against the organic curves of Zapirian cruisers, yet they moved with practiced ease. On 100 different planets, alien children pressed their faces against screens, watching as human marines in black armor stood guard at diplomatic summits. Their parents whispered in hushed tones, repeating the words that had spread through the Federation like wildfire. They were holding back. In the Federation Council chamber, the amphitheater hummed with tension. Species from across the galaxy filled the tiered seating, their varied forms shifting uneasily. Councillor Zelth's tendrils trembled as he addressed the assembly. "The data does not lie," he said, his voice amplified across the chamber. The human vessels engaged at less than 40% combat capacity during the war games. Their weapons, which we dismissed as primitive, were operating on reduced yield settings. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Captain Vance stood at the center of the chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't need a podium or amplification. The room had gone silent the moment he stepped forward. "You wanted to test us," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "You got your answer." A Vorac delegate, his carapace still bandaged from the simulation, rose unsteadily. "This changes nothing," he hissed. "One battle does not rewrite the hierarchy of the galaxy." Vance didn't blink. "It does when the hierarchy was built on ignorance." He tapped a command into his wrist display, and the chamber's central hologram flickered to life. A star map unfolded, highlighting a dozen systems. These are human colonies, not outposts, not fledgling settlements, colonies. The map zoomed in, revealing sprawling cities, orbital shipyards, defense grids. "We've been spacefaring longer than your records suggest. We just didn't feel the need to announce ourselves until now." Ambassador Krellis' bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically. "You deceived us," Vance smirked. "No, you deceived yourselves." A new voice cut through the tension. Harmony, the Federation's AI overseer. Its glowing orb flickered above the assembly. "Analysis complete." It intoned. "Human strategic doctrine does not align with any known galactic warfare paradigms. Their tactics are unpredictable. Their resilience exceeds all recorded biological limits. Recommendation: revise first contact protocols immediately." Zelth's tendrils stiffened. To what end? Harmony's light dimmed, as if hesitant. Category update. Humanity is to be classified as apex species. Threat level, absolute. The chamber erupted. Vorac warriors slammed their claws against their chest plates in protest. Zapirian diplomats flashed distress patterns across their skin. Only the humans remained still. Vance Lieutenant Mara Cole beside him, and the dozen other officers who had accompanied them. They didn't gloat, they didn't need to. Then something unprecedented happened. A Vorac battlemaster Droth, the same one Cole had wounded in the simulation, stepped forward. His mandibles clicked once, a sign of respect among his kind. Slowly, deliberately, he bowed, not the shallow tilt of a warrior acknowledging an equal. A deep, sweeping bend at the waist, the gesture of a subordinate to a superior. Cole's eyebrows rose. Didn't see that coming. Vance kept his expression neutral, but his voice was quiet. They're adapting faster than I expected. Across the chamber, the murmurs died down. One by one, other delegates followed Droth's lead. Zapirians folded their upper limbs in submission. The telepathic Corellians lowered their floating orbs. Even Zelth's tendrils drooped in defeat. Harmony's voice was the last to speak. Protocol amendment logged, effective immediately. All Federation vessels encountering human ships are to yield right of way. Diplomatic engagements are to be conducted under human terms. Military exercises require human oversight. The orb pulsed once, then added, almost reluctantly, Addendum, humanity is exempt from standard threat assessment parameters. They are beyond classification. Vance turned to leave, his officers falling into step behind him. As they walked through the arched exit, Cole glanced back at the stunned assembly. Think they'll behave now? Vance didn't answer. He didn't need to. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and so the Federation revised its first contact protocols. The new entry was brief, stark, and utterly unambiguous. Do not provoke, do not underestimate. Humanity is the apex. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 languages, the message spread. Parents warned their young warriors, adjusted their tactics. Diplomats recalibrated their strategies. And in the darkness between the stars, human ships, real human ships, not the polite, restrained versions that shown the Federation, continued their silent patrols. The galaxy would never make the same mistake again, and so the galaxy learned first contact protocols existed for a reason. Humans were the predators they were meant to warn about.